Hey, welcome to Class Act Media. I'm Jack, and happy Halloween. Now is the time to turn off the lights and turn on your favorite scary movie. There's only one problem. I'm not a big horror movie guy. Although, recently there was one horror movie that I watched that, who am I kidding? It's Evil Dead 2. You read the title, I'm talking about Evil Dead 2 today. Yeah, like I said, I'm not really a big fan of horror movies. It's nothing against them, I'm just not a big fan of being scared. I have always been fascinated by horror movies though, so I'm trying to ease myself into the genre with horror comedies. So, when I saw Evil Dead 2 on Hulu, I was intrigued. I had heard a bit about the Evil Dead series through cultural osmosis, and from what I understood, the first movie was a straight-up horror movie while the sequel was more of a horror comedy. So I took the plunge and watched the sequel without ever watching the first movie, and I think I made the right choice. Evil Dead 2 does a great job catching anyone who didn't see the first movie up to speed. The first 10 or so minutes basically recap the lore of the Evil Dead world as well as the plot and characters of the first movie. It's almost like they expected nobody to have seen Evil Dead 1, which honestly might have been a valid concern. From what I can tell, it seems like it was a pretty cult movie made on a shoestring budget. I love movies like that, success stories that beat all the odds. I'd like to watch the Evil Dead 1 if I wasn't such a wuss. Anyway, back to Evil Dead 2, I should probably also give a little synopsis of the first 10 minutes for anyone who hasn't seen the first movie. Basically, Bruce Campbell plays Ash Williams, a guy who drives his girlfriend up to a seemingly abandoned cottage in the woods for a romantic weekend getaway. Turns out, however, that the cottage was previously home to a team of researchers who are studying an ancient artifact called the Book of the Dead. If a passage from the book is read out loud, demons are summoned from a dimension of evil. Hate it when that happens. So, his girlfriend gets possessed and the plot happens from there. Anyway, after the recap of the first movie, we move on to what can only be described as Bruce Campbell losing his mind by himself for about half an hour. And this is where the movie really shines. Bruce Campbell is perfect at channeling the right level of corny to suit the tone of the movie while still making the threats of the demons he's facing seem very real. On top of that, there are some incredibly creative sequences here. For instance, the scene where Ash's hand gets possessed. Just his hand. The physical acting on display here from Bruce Campbell is on a level I haven't seen since Dick Van Dyke. The way he's moving his hand as opposed to how he moves the rest of his body makes me truly believe that he has no control over it. My favorite part is right here, where his hand grabs him by the back of the neck and flips him around. This is such a good stunt and I have no idea how they did it. I'm sure I could look it up, but honestly I kind of prefer not to know. I want to live in my own little fantasy world where Bruce Campbell just did that all on his own. Even after the fight, when Ash has been knocked out cold, he's still displaying some great physical acting. He has to display all his emotions exclusively through the movements of his hand, and it absolutely pays off. Another great sequence during this portion of the movie is the part where everything in the cottage just starts laughing, and I do mean everything. A mounted deer head, a lamp, even the books on the shelf. Eventually Ash just turns to the camera and starts laughing too, as if the absurdity of the moment has given him brief and complete awareness as this is all just a movie. This lasts for what feels like a solid minute, just non-stop insane laughter. It's equal parts scary, uncomfortable, and hilarious, and is without a doubt one of the most memorable parts of a movie chock full of memorable parts. In the second half of the movie, Bruce Campbell gets a few more characters to act off of when the daughter of the two researchers who own the cottage arrive with a crew of her own. And it's here that I think some of the most true horror of the movie comes into play. You see, after possessing someone, the demons, called Deadites, have the ability to perfectly imitate the person they've possessed. When the daughter of the researcher shows up, her name is Annie by the way, they find her Deadite-possessed mother locked in the basement. In a last-ditch effort to get released, she reverts back to looking normal and begins to sing to Annie. The fear of some unknowable and unexplainable horror using the love you have for your family against you is such a twisted idea to love fear from. I love it. That brings me to another point. Earlier in the movie, a similar thing to this happens when Ash's possessed girlfriend tries to convince Ash not to kill her by pretending to be normal again. Ash, of course, doesn't fall for this and kills her anyway. Now, in this movie, when a Deadite is killed, the blood they release is green or black or some other unnatural color. All except for this one scene where the blood is red, leading you to wonder if Ash really did just kill his girlfriend. I mean, you don't wonder that for long, considering that she was a head. She probably wasn't alive, she was just a head. Oh, and going back to Annie's mother, she actually illustrates another way Evil Dead 2 implements its horror in genius ways. After they manage to keep her locked in the basement, we sort of just forget about her for a while. The movie waits until just the right time, when tensions are highest and it looks like things couldn't possibly get any worse. Then wham, she's still there, you little dummy, haha! Sure, this movie uses the occasional dreaded jump scare, but they're used so sparingly and the rest of the horror is so smart that really, who cares? And if you're thinking that this horror comedy is a bit too much horror and not enough comedy, well, here's Bruce Campbell replacing his hand with a chainsaw and saying, "Groovy." So, I guess that's all I have to say about Evil Dead 2. Like I said, I've always been fascinated by horror movies, so if you have any recommendations for me, leave them in the comments below. Just please be gentle. Remember, I'm still a big weenie boy when it comes to scary movies. See you next time, guys.
Jedi's always like to get there free.